Hola amigos y buenos días. Lo siento que no estoy en clase hoy, pero yo tengo un poco de información para ustedes. Entonces vamos a mirar este video para aprender un poco más en nuestro capítulo y la lección en vez de tener worksheets de hacer en clase. Entonces vamos a aprender hoy. Sí, yo voy a enseñarles. Entonces, just wanted to come to you today so that I could help instruct us in what's coming next in our next chapter. We left off before winter break talking about the progressive tense. Remember the estar, ando, or yendo. And then we wrapped that quick unit up right before we left for break so that when we came back, we would start something new. Now, if you remember correctly, I told you that we weren't going to be covering the tense that they give us in chapter 5 because it is less frequently used. And so I really wanted just to focus on using the present perfect and the present progressive. And we're going to focus on the other concepts in this chapter, mainly being object pronouns. So hopefully you were able to watch Senor Jordan and his direct object pronoun conversations and what they are. But here's where we put a lot of stuff that we learned in level 1 together in level 2, and we expand. So I will say that none of this is really new. You know subject pronouns, you know direct object pronouns, you know indirect object pronouns. So this should sound familiar to you. We're just going to take some time to dig in and review it. So the first thing I want you to do is get out a piece of paper and a pencil. So go ahead and do that. We'll pause. All right, and I want you to take this piece of paper and make it look like this box. All right, then I want you to write in, starting on the left side, we're gonna put our landscape piece of paper, so it's gonna go long ways, like this, and not like this, so long ways. You're gonna make this box as it is in the photo, and you're gonna have subject written at the top. One of the spaces, then you're gonna have reflexive, and then you're gonna have indirect, and then you're gonna have direct. So it should kind of look like that, all right? In level 1 of Spanish and continuing on, we know what subject pronouns are. Remember, they are the ones, the main characters, the main actors of each of our sentences. And sometimes these pronouns take the place of proper nouns. So, I, you, he, she, her, Senora Amanda, or us, or them, or you all. Those are all our subject pronouns, how we conjugate verbs. So you can fill in that. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellos, ustedes. You know that already. So just go ahead and write it down. Make it look like this. All right. So then, over on Tuesday, you hopefully watched some of those videos with Senor Jordan about direct object pronouns. Remember, the direct object pronouns are the what of our verbs. We learned they were me, te, lo, la, nos, los, and las. Those direct object pronouns answer the question of what is being verbed. For example, my mom cooks dinner. My mom is the subject, cooks is the verb, dinner is the what. What does she cook? Dinner. Or I eat pizza. I is the subject, or yo como, eat the pizza. What do I eat? Pizza. So pizza becomes the direct object. And in Spanish, we can replace the direct objects with these pronouns. So we have a me, or a you, or an it, or an us, or an its, or a thems. We use the it a lot. So if you know what we're looking at here, we've got 4 options because we have singular, plural, masculine, and feminine, right? So we can replace direct objects with their pronouns, and then we can rewrite our sentence and move that little pronoun somewhere else. Do you remember where it goes? I hope you're saying all the right words. It goes before the conjugated verb. All right, it doesn't go wherever you want it to go. That's not how it works in this language. It goes before the conjugated verb. It doesn't go before the subject in the sentence. It goes before the conjugated verb. It doesn't go after, at the end of the sentence. It goes before the conjugated verb. So where does it go? Before the conjugated verb. That's right. All right, so we can talk a little bit about direct object pronouns, but I'm pretty sure Senor Jordan did the best that he could and how to replace it, especially when we have simple sentences. For example, here's my direct object pronouns, a reminder over here to answer the what. I eat pizza. If I were to translate, yo como pizza, I can take a pronoun and replace pizza because it's the what, and I'm going to move it before the conjugated verb. So, yo la como. Done. She asked for a car. I wish I could ask for a car. Ella pidió, because it's that stem changer in the IR, un coche. And remember, asked for is included in the verb pedir. So, ella lo matches that un coche pidió. Simple, right? Super simple. You find the direct object, replace it with the matching pronoun, and you got it. Put it before the conjugated verb. Okay, so then we kind of add more to our sentences. You know, I like to talk a whole lot more about expanding our sentences, making them really, really full sentences so I don't have to ask any questions. So if I say I throw the ball, I, subject, throw, verb. What do I throw? The ball. Well, who did you throw the ball to? Who got it? Who received it? So that who question adds a little bit more information. That who becomes the indirect object. They're the indirect recipient of the thing that's being done. So you're throwing the ball. If we were in class, I'd have a ball right now and I'd be like lobbing it to the very back of the classroom to Elise or to Alex over there or to Halston, right? Or maybe up here to Anna Grace. I'm just gonna lob it right to you. I'm throwing the ball to that person. When we use indirect objects, sometimes to clarify, we might actually put in that same person. And you go, I remember us having this conversation last year. Why do we do it twice? It's so redundant. Well, if I use the indirect object pronoun le, it could be anybody. It could be him or her or Senora Lakami. It could be any of those people. So if I need to clarify who I'm throwing the ball to so that everyone else can understand, I would put in this clarifier with that personal and then the person. So with your chart that you have drawn out, we're gonna add in this little section for indirect object pronouns. So, you know, here's the subject list over here. Come all the way to this side for direct. Now I've got indirect, me, te, le, nos, les. So here we have me, te, le, nos, and les. Notice that we don't have a differentiation between gender, not between masculine and feminine, just from singular and plural. But if you look, me, te, nos, nos, in third person, singular and plural, that's the only change for indirect object pronouns. But you see how this one could kind of confuse us? I don't know who the lay is at all. Who have I thrown the ball to? I don't know, it just went into the air. So we could clarify it. Yo tiro la pelota a Elise, or yo tiro la pelota a Anna Grace. So that is the clarifier there. If you want to go ahead and open up your books, por favor, you can put that piece of paper to the side. En la página 116, 116, we see the conversation about direct object pronouns, and then we move into indirect object pronouns. You can have sentences where we use both direct and indirect objects at the same time. We'll get there, but here we're going to practice using the indirect object pronouns me, te, le, nos, or les. If you read, you will see here that I am giving the apple to Senorita Lopez. What am I giving? The apple. That's the direct object. But who is getting the apple? Senorita Lopez. So she becomes the indirect object pronoun. If you kind of look to the other side, you'll see where that little clarifier box is about how we can use the a and then the person a mí, a ti, or ella, a él, or a Senora Lakami, any of those, and you can put them following the verb. So indirect object pronoun kind of acts like a direct object pronoun as far as placement. Where does it go? Before the conjugated verb. And the thing to remember here is that if you do have both indirect and direct, indirect is always going to come before. So the sentence would read like subject, your main actor, indirect object pronoun, direct object pronoun, then verb. All right, so if we remember that pattern, this will also help guide us if we write this chart out in the correct way. We've got our subject, reflexive, indirect, direct. That's kind of the order of pronouns that we see used in Spanish sentences. And so there we have it in a better way to understand it. The third type of pronoun that is covered in this particular chapter is reflexive pronouns. I know there have been some examples before where I've said, just don't worry about that yet, we'll get to it. Where the se is attached to an infinitive, like cepillarse, when we were talking about the man who is brushing his teeth. Bañarse, to bathe oneself. Mirarse, to look at oneself in the mirror. A reflexive verb is something that is done to one's self. Or levantarse is to stand yourself up. Or dormirse is to put yourself to bed. Acostarse, to lie yourself down. So that reflexive pronoun that's attached to an infinitive reminds us, oh, this is a reflexive verb. So the pronoun that we use actually matches the subject. So to help make that make sense, if I am brushing my own teeth, something I'm doing to myself, I, the subject, yo, me, because I'm doing it myself, me, cepillo. And I conjugate my verb to fit the yo form. So everything kind of matches all together when you use the reflexive verb. I do realize that our study and talk about reflexive verbs has been kind of little, but there will be a list when we get back to class, when I'm with you the next time. I'll have a list of other high frequency reflexive verbs so that we can practice just conjugating them and using those pronouns in the right way. Okay, remember, all of our pronouns, where do they go? Before the conjugated verb. You got it, all right? Flip, página 118. Some important things to remember about object pronouns. 1, the order of pronouns. Take a second and read that. Oh, look, it says the order is reflexive, indirect, and direct. So, let's fill out the rest of our chart. Subject, reflexive, me, te, se, nos, se. Indirect, me, te, le, nos, les. And direct, me, te, lo, la, nos, los, las. So this should be completed on your paper now. If it isn't, take a pause and do that now. That will help give us a visual of how these pronouns fall. But what happens when we do have an indirect and a direct object pronoun? There's one little change we have to do, and I think, if I remember correctly, we did get through a little bit of it last year. So let's throw the ball again. Who are we going to throw the ball to? I don't know who you're going to say you're throwing the ball to, so I'm just going to make up one right now. We'll just go with Juan. Juan is going to throw the ball. All right, take a quick second and write these two sentences down. If you want, someone can write them on the expo board too, but I want you to have them where you can see them. Juan throws the ball, all right? Who's our subject? Juan. What does he do? He throws. What does he throw? The ball. So we get subject, verb, direct, object. Here, Juan throws the ball to her. Same subject, same verb, same direct object. Now we've got a recipient of that verbed object. That's the indirect object. So her becomes the indirect object. We can replace all of these direct and indirect object pronouns and rewrite our sentences. So pause and give it a try. All right, so our first one, Juan tira la pelota. Our translation to throw, tirar, pelota, ball. I think we do know that. And then Juan tira la pelota a ella. All right, so we have now a direct object and an indirect object. Let's change this direct object and this indirect object to pronouns. What do we get? What would be for la pelota? So look on your little chart for direct object pronouns. We're looking for that singular feminine it, la, right? So we're going to change that to a la, and then a ella, we're going to look in our indirect object column for that third person singular, that's le, all right? So we changed it to la and le, and then we put them before the conjugated verb. Remember, we talked about putting indirect first, then the direct, which would then follow or come before the verb. Here's where it goes wrong and south. We cannot ever lay la or lay low or lace los or lace los, none of that. We can never have a la and a la next to each other. So this rule, when we use le, a third person indirect object pronoun, and a third person direct object pronoun, we got to make a little change, and that's what your book is talking about. So it takes that le and changes it to a se. So Juan se la tira. That is what happens when we use direct and indirect at the same time with third person object pronouns. That is what Page 119 will tell you there. The other reasons that they give, you can put or object pronouns. They do always come before conjugated verbs. However, they can also be attached to an infinitive, which is that AR-ER-IR verb. It can be attached to a command, which you won't learn until next year. It can also be attached to that ando or iendo gerund. Ndio part, remember that? So they give you a few examples that you can read through and see that as well. If we do attach them to the ondos or iendos, we have to kind of mess around with the accents and the stresses of syllables. So just keep that in mind. We'll talk about the accents when I return a little bit more. So with that in mind, I do think that you can at least attempt the work in your book for homework. If there's time left in class after you finish these other exercises today, you can start working on it together with your table mate, and we can go from there and be able to use what we know about object pronouns. But this right here, this is what I want to see when I come back. I want to see that everybody has this big chart, all right? Keep it somewhere where you can look at it because it's a great reference to remember how things go. So SRID is the pattern and the order that these pronouns will go. We also want to remember that really the only thing different is this third person line as far as the object pronouns are concerned. You may or may not, or may have a quiz on creating this set, this visual right here. So take it with you this weekend. Let's make sure we can fill in the blanks. I know on the final exam, you do have to do this. So this is going to be great information. Stick it in your notebook or right there in your book as you're working through the homework. And if you have any questions, you can reach out or we can just tackle them next week. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Y nos vemos.